Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Host of the Tony Kinnett Cast.
Let's get down to business.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
WCYTV.
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast. My name is Tony Kinnett and we've got a breaking story out a couple of days ago. I was looking at some of the ABC News coverage. Now, you might be thinking about the ABC News coverage in which ABC just settled with Donald Trump's team for $15 million because they made the wild decision via George Stephanopoulos to continually suggest that Donald Trump was guilty of rape and that he had been convicted of rape. He'd been found completely and totally liable of rape and he was just a rapist. And no, that's not true. That's defamation. And so ABC News settled with Donald Trump's team for $15 million and then I think $1 million or two towards a presidential library. Now, here's where things get fun. This is like run of the mill for ABC News. Shoddy reporting, garbage reporting, and really bad reporting standards. This goes all the way back, at least when I started watching them, when I literally started subscribing to ABC News updates, was back around the Maui wildfires, after they suggested via an extremely spurious, dubious headline that the Maui wildfires might be caused by climate change, which was complete nonsense. They were caused by arson. So since then, I've been keeping an eye on them, and this is what I found. Linda McMahon, Trump's pick for the Secretary of Education position. A lot of people didn't know a whole lot about her other than that they had known that she was married to Vince McMahon. Obviously, she's from Connecticut, so there's not a lot that people are always keeping an eye on in Connecticut. So no one really knew a whole lot about her. So a news outlet might make some kind of little expose, a piece, kind of giving an overview of who she is. In steps Jay O'Brien. Jay O'Brien suffers from two things. Number one, he suffers from the inability to research anything at all. I'm not even convinced the man can read full sentences. I have yet to be convinced. Number two, he suffers from news anchor voice. So as you'll hear in just a second, he has this news voice that kind of lilts in a certain way. It's like Captain Kirk if he was a TV anchor. But that's not at all the qualm that I have with, Jay in this particular case. Jay O'Brien decided that he was going to head up the expose on Trump's education nominee, Linda McMahon. And he begins in the first minute of this 8-minute video. He goes just right off the top of the bat by just giving a bunch of false statements. One of which is a supremely false statement, which is that she has absolutely no qualifications at all, no formal education training. Here, check it out.
If she receives Senate confirmation, McMahon, who has no formal teaching training and little experience in education, will be tasked with setting policies for the nation's schools.
That is, nope, I'm sorry. That is 157,000% false. And here's why. Number one, Linda McMahon has a teaching certificate to go along with her degree in French from East Carolina University. Now, you may not think that a teaching certificate is that special. I would argue personally that teaching certificates are a very good thing. Teaching certificates, which often go with co-teaching programs in a university, allows an individual, a student, to study a subject that is not just education. So in Linda McMahon's case, it was French. In many others, it's science, mathematics. For example, there are teacher certification programs in which former accountants or insurance agents who are really good with math will go and get a teaching certificate, though they do not have an education degree. They have the content knowledge, but they don't have the education degree so that they can then teach in public schools. Now, Linda McMahon completed a teacher education program at East Carolina University. They just didn't call it an education degree. She has a teaching certificate. That is definitely formal education training. And by the way, if you're going to do research on this isn't unknown stuff anyway, either, by the way. It was pointed out first, I believe that the distinction on what, in fact, her credentials were at first pointed out in a Hartford, Connecticut newspaper in 2011. Her teaching certificate has been mentioned in multiple pieces of coverage, from the Washington Post to Newsweek to USA Today. She has been cited extensively, not just having a teaching certificate, but also that she was on the Board of Education for Connecticut for a year. And she was also elected to the Sacred Heart University Board of Trustees in 2004, where she has served and still serves. So she's been involved with education for a healthy amount of time. But the way that Jay describes it, not only did he lie right off the crack of the bat, he then starts framing the interview in some weird ways. And if you're listening to the live stream or you're listening on air, I want you to keep an ear out for a little bit of a change in the audio as he describes the past of Linda McMahon, because it's really malicious.
McMahon is a relative newcomer to managing public education, but no stranger to politics. In 2009, she left the WWE to mount the first of two unsuccessful bids for Senate in Connecticut, running as a Republican. McMahon then served for a year on the Connecticut State Board of Education and has said she had dreams when she was younger of becoming a teacher, only to put those on hold when she got married and helped build the media behemoth World Wrestling Entertainment.
So two things there. Number one, he starts off by talking about how she has this lack of qualification. She's a relative newcomer to education. No, she's not. No, she's not. She's had a teaching certificate since the late 60s. That's not a newcomer. If she's been on the board at Sacred Heart University as one of the board of trustees at a Catholic university in Connecticut since 04, '04 is not yesterday, folks. As much as many of us would love to believe '04 was yesterday. It's not. She's not a relative newcomer to education. That's a lie. And then his mic changes. So it was really crystal clear, and then it got kind of fuzzy and dark. Here's why he did that. He ended up having to go and re-record something later. Why? Because he had to add context. He already knew he was completely full of garbage because he lied. So then he, I do have to mention that she served on the Connecticut Board of Education. He doesn't mention that she was on a board of trustee for a university, and he doesn't mention her teaching certificate. So either he's grossly incompetent or he's a liar. That's ABC News, ladies and gentlemen. Looks like all that Disney money went right down the toilet. It doesn't end there. No worries. Now we're going to pay attention to how he frames those around the argument, because the Secretary of Education position is kind of important. It might be a situation in which the powers of education from the federal level are returned to the states, since the federal Department of Education has been an insane disaster, a horrible disaster, has not improved one facet of the American public education system. But now he starts talking about her side versus the other side. And it's kind of wild.
Education policy back to the state, local, and parental level, a longtime goal of Republicans and controversial conservative groups like Moms for Liberty, which has proposed public school book bans, fought mask mandates during the pandemic, and echoed what critics say is anti-LGBTQ rhetoric. The group's co-founder, Tiffany Justice, has met with Trump and McMahon about education policy.
So I think Linda's a wonderful choice, and she believes that the people of America are smart, and parents are the ones that can make the best decisions for their children.
She's a businesswoman, but not an educator. Is she qualified?
What we need in Washington are disruptors.
So I'm gonna cut that one short right there. So is she qualified? She's not an educator. Again, sir, she served on a board of trustees position since '04. She has been a member of the Connecticut Board of Education and has the requisite certificates. Oh, well, aren't you sure? And I love how he frames Moms for this controversial conservative group. And here's why I'm going to point this out. Up next, he's going to talk about people who don't like Linda McMahon. And he's going to talk about Becky Pringle. Now, Becky Pringle is the president of the National Education Association, the largest teachers union in the country, the largest donor to Democrats in existence. So he's already talked about two important things. Number one, he said that she ran for Senate as a Republican and then frames Moms for Liberty as a controversial conservative group. See if Jace mentions at all the politics of the other side. I bet you'll find that not the case.
But it's McMahon's qualifications that concern educators like Becky Pringle, the president of the National Education Association, the nation's largest teachers union.
An unqualified person being in that position necessarily means they've never taught a day in the classroom. They don't understand the needs of our students.
First of all, you can understand the needs of teachers and students without teaching in the classroom. That's the silliest thing I've ever heard. I hear it consistently. I've known a lot of veteran teachers who are awful at their job and awful at knowing what students need. I've seen fresh out of the womb teachers right out of their bachelor's program have a masterful grip and understanding of what kids need. But notice he didn't say, and major Democrat donor and speaker at Democratic conventions, Becky Pringle. No, absolutely not. You didn't see him showing any B-roll footage of Becky speaking at the DNC, did you? No, because in the media landscape, those a part of the teachers union and the Democrats are all just normal, run-of-the-mill, everyday Americans, and everyone on the right side of the aisle is this controversial Republican who's unqualified, inexperienced. But it's complete and total garbage. So if you're wondering why ABC News coughed up $15 million to Trump, it's because they're bad at what they do. And they can't keep people on their staff from writing, publishing, and saying false statements on the air. I have editors that watch what it is that I write down, that I'm going to put in an article and publish, things that I put out in front of the public. I have people who keep an eye on it. So much so that even like really tiny missteps in speaking. For example, I did an interview that we're going to be airing soon, in which I confuse the Russian invasion in Georgia in 2008 with the Russian invasion of Crimea in 2012. I mixed those up initially, and I corrected immediately because it's kind of important. Very basic skill. You don't see Jay O'Brien doing that. You see him awkwardly slipping in audio in the back door, like that makes the false statements he made any more palatable. It's gross, it's dishonest, and as long as they do it, we're going to continue to point it out. We'll be here with more quick news in a second. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
All right, a little bit of quick news this evening because things just never slow down. First and foremost, I want to point out that a couple of updates on the horrible Christian school shooting at Abundant Life Christian School in Madison, Wisconsin. Not obviously, it's an absolutely terrible situation for a myriad of reasons that we'll get into, but especially knowing that some of our listenership is in that area. We're praying for you guys. This is an absolute tragedy. And at the time, what we can reveal is that 7 have been taken to the hospital. There are at least 2 dead. So 1 student, 1 teacher, the killer as well. And there have been a lot of questions, especially because when there is an attack on a Christian school, in the last couple of months, it has followed the same line. There is an individual who is trans and extremely far to the left, who has committed an abhorrent act of crime. They leave some kind of disturbing manifesto. And by the way, when there's someone on the far right who does something insane like this, the media is extremely quick to cover the individual's politics, their sex, their age, their weight, what color they are in great detail, and all of this stuff. And it's very telling the instant that you ask a chief of police. For example, in Madison, the chief of police is terrible. I've known this chief of police for a long time. He's an extreme lib. He is very bad at his job. Madison went very downhill under his tenure and is continuing to go downhill under his tenure. He was asked about today about the gender and the age of the shooter, because people want to know about what occurred. Because again, if you're going to respond to a situation, you actually do need the details. Here is his non-answer.
Female and
Wrong clip. There you go.
Shooter and what their motivations were, or have you made contact with their family members? Anything updated on that?
Sure. There's nothing new that I can tell you about the shooter at this time. Again, as difficult as today is, that's still someone's child that's gone. That's still someone that has to deal with what happened today. And so we want to make sure that we can ensure as much cooperation as we can.
In case you missed that, he said, well, we could tell you, basically relative factors of the individual who committed this horrible crime, but that's still somebody's kid. That's still somebody. Wait, hold on a second here. That's not how this works. Withholding information from people because you don't like what conclusions people may draw about the attacker is not how this works. That is an absolute garbage thing to do. Well, Andy No, friend of the show, He's been on before to talk a little bit about some of his investigatory work. He has gone on a bit of an investigation, and he is prepared to release his findings on who he believes the mass shooter is. He believes that it is a 15-year-old girl who carried out the shooting, and he says did not identify as trans. However, he said that she has a long, disturbing online history of being obsessed with school shooters and death, because I swear to goodness, they always are. There's always like clear signs of mental instability. They focus on suicide. They focus on school shootings and all this other stuff. By the way, we knew these people when I was in middle school. We knew these people. I can still picture the people. You know who these people are. It's not like the signs aren't there. Every time we go through one of these tragedies, like, say the line, Bart, and it's the same thing. Person was obsessed with school shooting. No, I, for one, am just absolutely shocked. Well, she posted insane things online like all men need to be killed. She had an account on, quote, watch people die, end quote. She constantly commented on the videos. Her Spotify playlist featured themes of suicide and killings. There is a mental health crisis in this country. On a funding page that she had was a banner picture of the Columbine shooters. The signs are there. Our children are not mentally healthy, but instead of, actively parenting children and getting them off of social media, which the more that I watch these tragedies unfold, the more I'm of the opinion that no one under the age of 18 should have social media, period. If my career was not linked to making sure that we published content on social media, I would absolutely delete my social media. It's filth, it's garbage. Kids should not be on social media. And if you allow your children to be on social media, you're exposing them to this stuff voluntarily. That is your choice. But everyone's on social media. The world's not raising your kid. You're raising your kid. Quit this stuff. I guarantee that played a center, because it always does. They get into this little garbage romantic idea of death and suffering and mass cleansing. This shooter, the United Healthcare shooter, the Nashville Covenant School shooter, it's always the same thing. In other news, a group of Senate Democrats, according to the Senate Judiciary, has introduced a bill to abolish the Electoral College, which just goes to show you that there are entire groups of Democrats in Congress who have no idea how the Constitution works. There is not a bill that can be passed that can eliminate the Electoral College. If you are going to change the U.S. Constitution, you have to pass an amendment. That requires the states to vote on. You can't just abolish the Electoral College. That is not a thing you can do. But by the way, and just to show you how stupid some of these individuals are, the Senate Judiciary account on X said that this would restore democracy by allowing direct election of presidents through the popular vote alone. Guys, the Electoral College has been in place since our Constitution was ratified and the country officially began. There has never been direct election of the President of the United States. Restore democracy. You're not restoring. We are a republic, a democratic republic that prevents mob rule. Restoring democracy. You're not restoring something that didn't exist in the first place. Mob rule, the French Revolution, the same kind of Marxist, hyper-nationalistic garbage that brought you both the French national state, that brought you Hitler, that brought you Mao and Stalin. That kind of garbage is bad. Our country's entire framework was built to keep us from going down that road. However, all hope is not lost just yet. There is a flicker, a small candlelight flicker of hope for the Dems. Congressman Jerry Connolly has won the race to become the ranking member on the House Oversight Committee, beating out the hyper-progressive AOC. Which is essential if they are going to be a relevant party ever again. They have to get rid of the hyper-progressives, who, by the way, are cheering on the shootings and will continue to do so. We're going to be back in just a minute to talk about the drones and maybe a little about something about Ketanji Brown Jackson, the SCOTUS judge. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast. I'm Tony Kinnett, and I have just one little bit of carryover that I wanted to air the last segment before we get into the bald wonder that is Alejandro Mayorkas and his Department of Blindness. So first of all, remember when Clarence Thomas took a vacation and everyone lost their ever-loving minds because, oh, how could a Supreme Court justice, do anything ever that, if you ever do anything fun, that's clearly taking favors and you're ruling in court cases that the group doesn't have anything to do with. But anywho, it's corrupt to the core. Oh, terrible. Well, Ketanji Brown Jackson took a bit of a favor this weekend to fulfill her lifelong dream of starring in a Broadway musical by a trans, queer, magical, non-binary, whatever. I know. I also am quite shocked that Ketanji Brown Jackson's life dream, as someone who said very openly they could not define what a woman was a theater major at heart. I know, just shocking. Well, here is Ketanji Brown Jackson, who has mortally just made me want to vomit in my very soul.
Female empowerment. Sick. I like it too. I think what I like about it is that I am having a very strongly negative reaction to it.
Yes. So I love the whole argument that the Supreme Court's not supposed to be partisan. They roasted, I believe it was Samuel Alito, for having the gall to write a conservative order, have a conservative conversation with a Catholic mom. They're like, how could you be so? You're supposed to be nonpartisan. She's out here going, oh, I love that, I'm out here all the time, promoting trans stuff and transing the kids stuff, and there's a little negative reaction to that. Yeah. Oh, so much for that standard. Well, I mean, who am I to stand in the way of such an admirable justice of wisdom? Please continue, oh talented thespian.
Like I hate it. Which makes me think it must be brilliant. Got this feeling in my body. Can't stop the feeling.
My life dream is just to be like a Broadway music. There's nothing wrong with acting. But there is something wrong with the theater major goober mindset that everything is just about the stage. I've acted before. Heck, I was the lead role in our university production of Sherlock Holmes. That's totally fine. But obsessing about it to the point where you take on this weird pseudo sexual obsession with theater is not the dunk that you think it is. So that takes us over to Alejandro Mayorkas, the man whose accomplishments you might remember, such as, and also don't forget Alejandro Mayorkas, Biden's Secretary of Homeland Security. Now, you knew where this was going. I knew where this was going. There are drones that are flying off the coast of New Jersey, over New Jersey, near military installations. I've heard two theories that I think are plausible, and then all of the other theories are stupid. And again, you don't see me citing a bunch of sources for this as 100% my complete and total opinion. It's either this or it is this, though, in my analysis so far. Number one, it is the federal government who is using drones under FAA regulation to sweep the coast for what they believe might be radiation from a possible dirty nuke threat. I think that could be one thing, and the federal government could be lying about its operation. Do I think it's a psyop to test people reaction? No, I don't. I think that it is most likely they've received a threat and they're sweeping it, but they've been doing this a little too long now. I'm thinking that there is a little less credible. By the way, the reason I do say that is a credible possibility is because they are currently, the drones are currently holding to FAA regulations. They have the exact number of lights. As someone who has piloted small planes, they have the exact kind of lights that you're supposed to have on a small aerial vehicle. They blink in the exact same pattern. And the only thing is when you get too close to them, they shut off. Now, everything at this moment in time is completely shot, no pun intended, as far as completing an investigation by independent journalists, because the skies in New Jersey now are filled with police helicopters and photojournalists and amateur drones and all that kind of stuff. Now it's a clogged mess. And I don't really think that you're going to see that kind of information come forth. If it's not from them, I would say it's from one of America's primary aggressive, that being China or Iran. The reason I don't mention Russia is because Russia kinda is really bad at stuff. And if Russia's gonna operate, it ain't gonna be off the eastern seaboard. I love breaking that to you. The Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 video game campaign where Russians invade the eastern seaboard. No, sorry, Wolverines. I'm afraid not. It's not Russian. Could it be Chinese? Yeah, it could. Could it be Iranian? Yeah, it could. But you do have to look at the fact that they are obeying all of the lighting protocol for FAA regulations. Nobody has any idea. But you know what is worse than all of that? Is that Biden administration, specifically through Alejandro Mayorkas, has come forward to tell everyone everything's fine, no one panic. I seen from Airplane where everything's like burning behind him. He's like, everything is fine. And no one trusts him. And he's really upset that nobody trusts him. It's kind of funny to watch his bald head turn red. Here you go.
Absolutely, George, and thank you very much for having me. There's no question that people are seeing drones, and I want to assure the American public that we in the federal government have deployed additional resources, personnel, technology to assist the New Jersey State Police in addressing the drone sightings. Some of those drone sightings are, in fact, drones. Some are manned aircraft that are commonly mistaken for drones, and we do see duplicative reporting. But there's no question that drones are being sighted. Let me set the record straight here, George.
He doesn't.
There are thousands of drones flown every day in the United States. Recreational drones, commercial drones. That is the reality. And in September of 2023, the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, changed the rules so that drones could fly at night.
Okay, let's pop this real quick because I absolutely despise this man and how 115,000% stupid he is. So, first of all, here's how you know that it is not some like fun-loving, coordinated get out there. It's just nighttime flying. September of 23, more than 1 year ago was the rule change. Number two, if there's some type of like public event in which everyone's out flying drones at night, you know what you can find? The social media post, the forum post, the website calendar event, organizing people to fly their drones. You know what we haven't found? Any of that crap. None of it. That goofy Raid Area 51 meme went hyper viral. They found exactly the guy who posted it, exactly where it was going to be. And that was just a meme, but like still, you can trace any kind of event, imaginary or very real, to its source quite quickly. Also, the drones aren't doing anything that drone pilots do. They're hovering and observing things. So either it's the federal government who is scanning things, or it's a foreign power or an aggressor. We have no evidence that it's a foreign power or aggressor. No, you don't. This and the best part about all of this is that even if they did, let's see they actually are doing everything they're supposed to be doing. This is why institutional trust and the capital of that trust is important. So if you ever had an argument with someone and they've broken your trust, and then later on they were upset that you no longer trusted them, this is that situation. I will remind you that less than 2 calendar years ago, 2 Chinese spy balloons sailed across the continental United States, across CONUS, from coast to coast, over several military installations, taking pictures and sending them back to Beijing. We had reporting on this when it was over Montana. The federal government did nothing, wouldn't pop it. Oh, because the FAA has so much power. Yes, after 9/11, the FAA is allowed to tell anyone what to do. That's stupid. That's a stupid rule, by the way. Deregulation includes the FAA. The FAA has become just tyrannical with power so that state police agencies can't even shoot things out of the sky without getting Joe Biden's FAA secretary to kiss them right on their butt. That's ridiculous. So that would be one thing. And number two, I will remind everyone that the Biden administration did absolutely nothing until the balloons had taken all of their photos and had sent the photos back to China. And then Biden went and popped a bunch of registered identical weather balloons, like weather balloons that were registered NOAA, NOAA. This administration is so blitheringly incompetent, extremely incompetent, lest I also point out the Afghanistan withdrawal, the number of leaks to Iran. Our intelligence agency is a sieve. And they wonder why we want Pete Hegseth and not one of the current 4-star generals who've sat at a desk getting fat for the last 30 years. I'm sorry, I don't trust the federal government. There's no conspiracy to that either. They're incompetent. They are stupid. They are bad at their job. And by the way, this is kind of a pin in the hole of the conspiracy theory groups as well, because I wish that I could tell you, I really do. I wish I could tell you, well, I mean, you know, there could be a little bit of malice here. They could be trying to do something. No, they are stupid. They are bad at their job. Every one of these officials will come out and say, everything's fine. And the next day, the Middle East burns to the ground. When you put stupid people in power who are more concerned about genitals and skin color and wealth, like inequality, than individuals who are good at their jobs, this is what you get. It's what you get. And that bald goose egg of a Homeland Security director should not only be fired, but prosecuted. And they should have impeached him when they had the chance. We'll be back in a second for a bit of mail time. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Stick around.
To protect his family.
Mail time.
Mail time.
Mail time.
On the Tony Kinnett Cast.
All right, we got a few bits of questions here, there, and everywhere for those who are, enjoying the beautiful, beautiful Monday. I know it's not normally when we do mail time. Normally we do it on Fridays, but we did a little something different last Friday, so we're kind of catching up. That said, let's dig into a few questions that y'all have sent in. First of all, from a guy named 15% off Applebee's gift card. Very clever. He says, where do you draw the line between someone who enjoys like the podcast True Crime and someone who is off the deep end with like serial killer facts and all that trash? Two ways. Number one, what exactly are they watching? People who are desperately obsessed with mass shootings are not just like listening to kind of the true crime style podcasts that go through crimes and then talk to the victims and their families and go through the details like that. That's not who they're listening to. They are on the weird forum side of the internet that are reading people justifying things. It's always about the attitude. What kind of stuff are they reading? We talk about this with World War II all the time. How do you tell if somebody is, a super crazy right wing to the far right, super Nazi, whatever, or how do you tell someone who's just interested in World War II? Okay, what are they actually watching and studying? Are they watching, and this is as a parent, I'm not talking about as a government official watching a such subject or a suspect, but if you're as a parent, or like you have a kid, and they're interested in World War II, if they're watching like just documentary stuff and like Band of Brothers and, like World War II in color and that kind of stuff, that's totally fine. But if every day they're watching there's like this Adolf Hitler documentary that's more fairy tale, like 99% fairy tale. It's called The Greatest Story Never Told, and it's hilariously bad because of how false like all of it is. If that's what they're watching every day, day in and day out, well, that gives you a little bit of insight. It's all about the context and what they're watching and why. Also, the mental health. If you're really depressed, maybe listening to true crime podcast ain't where it's at. Just a little pro tip for you. When I am alone in the dark in the country, I usually do not listen to old number station broadcasts. That ain't the time to be listening to that, folks. Just some pro tips for life. All right, this next question is from Barry. Why are you still watching ABC, CBS, MSNBC, and CNN? For two very important reasons. Number one, because it is entertaining. It is entertaining. It is easy content for the show. For me to watch some idiot get up on national media and make a fool out of themselves, either by lying, posting false information, or telling everyone that Kamala's going to win and it's not even going to be close, or that actually grocery prices are fine. I mean, there's a level of entertainment to watching someone act that stupid. We all used to watch America's Home Funniest Videos. I mean, that's just moved to, national cable media now. So that's number one. Number two, because it's very easy oppo. So as a political pundit, I need to be able to explain to you every evening, those of you who have not steeped in the tepid, filthy bathwater of politics all day, I need to be able to tell you not only what is happening, but why. And, as an individual who is conservative with a few libertarian leanings, it is easy for me to tell you what a lot of conservatives are thinking. I also read a lot of conservative authors, all the way from national conservatives all the way over to neocons and tradcons. I can give you a pretty good idea of where they're coming from. I don't spend a lot of time reading the Washington Post, but that is the place to go to catch up on, for example, Jennifer Rubin's latest insane nonsense talking about why they think, from the Democrat side, why liberals believe that Biden pardoning everyone before he's even out of office for crimes that they totally didn't even commit, why that's a good thing. Well, I'm not going to, no offense to a lot of the great conservative pundits out there who have probably also seen that stuff. Instead of getting it secondhand, I'm going to go to the source. If I'm going to rip into Jay O'Brien, then I better have watched Jay O'Brien's video instead of just retweeting whatever came out, because even if you're in a diverse place, you will still find an echo chamber. We naturally go to individuals who think like us and speak like us. And there is no such thing as complete non-bias. It doesn't exist. Humans are naturally biased. So I also dip my hands into that garbage. I think we actually have some premium subscriptions to like the New York Times and things like that. Now, I used to have a subscription to my local garbage newspaper rag, the Indy Star, which they can't even give away for free now. That's how sad it is. I don't subscribe to them anymore, but then again, usually it just includes one of their sports columnists acting really awkward in front of a WNBA player, so it's not like there's much worth reading over at the paper that a whopping 4 people subscribe to. So sometimes I subscribe, sometimes I tune in, sometimes I don't. I don't know, just kind of one of those things. Last question here comes from Carl, and it's spelled normally. So for spelling your name correctly, I'm going to give you 2 points. You go ahead and keep track at home. He says, do you actually think that we'll see things calm down in the Trump administration? The answer is, yeah, there will be a point where there will be kind of a business as usual feeling that kind of digs in which once the economy rights itself. Now, right now, there are still people claiming that what Trump needs to do in order to to cash in on all of his promises, gas has to be 15 cents on day one, groceries have to be given stuff away for free at the door, and all these other nonsensical expectations. I do think that once you get about 3 to 6 months in, and I say 3 to 6 months because it really does depend on the international stage for the first couple of months. If Trump actually does go in and broker some ceasefire and peace deals between some of the warring factions and keeps some of the South Pacific shipping lanes open against China, then about 3 to 6 months in, you actually are going to see things kind of calm down. The regular media is not going to focus on him too much. He's a lame duck president. He can't run again. So it's either going to be Vance, who's extremely articulate, Ron DeSantis. At this point, those are pretty much your only 2 options. Nikki Haley is losing steam and will continue to lose steam because she has nothing new to say. Everything Nikki Haley says is just what donors said was safe 9 months ago. There's really no other big players. So it's just going to be riding out the Trump administration. And if they impeach him, which they don't have any of the possible majorities to even consider doing so, it's just been done before. It's kind of old news. I think that you're going to see things kind of return to stability. Domestic action regarding like BLM, I'm not sure, given how the Daniel Penny case turned out and given the way the winds are blowing in, for example, New York City, that you're going to see a desperate increase of that. They played their hand too early, which is what I accuse the left of often. They do. They do what would probably work 10 years from now, way too early. And the media complex that sustained them has now broken. I mean, it really has. It has now broken. I mean, you can have a CNN journalist who might get a hold of you and say, hey, did you say this on Twitter 15 years ago? And that doesn't matter now. 10 years ago, that would have scared you to death. Now that's just an opportunity to make fun of CNN. So the game has changed, and so therefore their ability to make the Trump administration chaotic has greatly diminished. We'll be back tomorrow with some more of this great lead up to Christmas. Thank you very much for joining us. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. See ya.